Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here today to talk yet again about preparedness because of some comments that came up. And I thought I should address this, and also for those who are more new into trying to be prepared, and especially those who have very little funds or maybe live in a very small place, just to know that there's always something you can do to get yourself in a better place. And it can cost very little money and take up very little space. So I've done several videos on this. But the reason I'm bringing this up now again is because one of our more recent power outages, which happen all the time here, and it has happened ever since I've lived here. I've lived here for about 35 years. And power outages are a common occurrence. So when you live in a place that has a lot of tall trees, and in the wintertime we get pretty powerful windstorms, it's just what happens. Because of this power outage, I like to use those times to kind of encourage people and to show people, well, this is what we do in these situations. So especially in the wintertime, when you live in rain country where it's almost perpetual cloud, and even with solar power, even with a decent battery bank, it can sometimes, you can drain it pretty quickly if you don't have a continual source recharging those batteries. So we can't depend a whole lot on the solar power in the middle of winter during a power outage, which is one of the reasons why we stay connected to public power, because in the summertime, it's the backup to our solar power that we're using most consistently. But if something happens, like last summer, we went almost all of last summer not being able to use our solar power, which is a long story in itself that we'll share at some point when we feel that the timing is right. Thankfully, we still had the public power to depend on because we couldn't use our solar power hardly at all last summer. And then in the wintertime, it's pretty low. So, I mean, really, solar power is just a really nice luxury to have, but it's certainly not the place to start. If you're looking at trying to be able to make it through a power outage, there are cheaper, better ways to go about it. And so I want to share some of that. We are blessed to have a wood stove. But let me tell you, when in this area, just because of the type of area it was really common when I first moved here for almost every home to have some kind of wood stove, or at the very least a fireplace. That was extremely common. A lot of the newer homes going in now don't have them, but pretty much every home when I got here did. So when we got this place and we got married, which at the end of March will be 34 years that we've been married, well, we had a wood stove insert. And as far as preparedness goes, I mean, that was what was in this place. And an insert's nice because you can use it to heat the house. But we didn't have any way to cook on top of it like we can with our wood stove that we have now, and so much more. But the only other thing we had besides maybe a flashlight or two was an oil lantern that had been gifted to us as a wedding gift. And let me tell you something. When I remember thinking, what a cool gift. I didn't realize just how important it was going to be until we had that first power outage after we got married. That thing was a lifesaver. I loved having that oil lantern. When I really started considering the fact that power outages were such a common occurrence, especially in the middle of winter, I started realizing how important it is to have such things like that on hand. And so everything we did from that point, we didn't go out and spend big dollars on wood stoves and solar power. That was things that came way down the road. The wood stove we have now, we bought many years down the road. At one point, we took out the insert. We put in a freestanding wood stove that was actually also came with this house because it was in this room at the time when we took it out, because it was a family room that was much smaller than it is now. And I went right away to teaching dance in it. And I needed that freestanding wood stove out of the way. We took out the insert, we redid the bricking, and we put that freestanding wood stove in there because it was more efficient than using an insert. And then as I started learning how to cook on top of it, I was thinking, man, it would sure be nice to have a bigger cooking surface, because this was a step top. So you just had two little narrow shelves to cook on. And I wanted something that could hold a really big pot or pan. And so eventually down the road, we saved up and we were able to buy the wood stove we have now that has a nice big cooking surface on it. But it took us many years to get to that point. And then eventually we started adding solar power as another backup source. But that was after we paid off our house, or maybe why we were just getting to where we were out of debt, everything else, and we were almost had the house paid off, and we just started building on it a little at a time. We didn't go out and pay $20,000. There's no way we could have done that for a setup and just have it all at once. We bought a little bit at a time and just slowly started building on what we had to get to where we are now, and we're still improving on the system. And you'll be seeing more updates on that down the road. Yeah, I would say as far as that goes, that should be your very last investment, and not worry about that. Start with small things. And some of that means learning how to just do things by hand, such as, learning how to hand stitch. Like if you need to fix a garment, learn how to sew things by hand. That's practically free. And then if you can afford it, buy yourself a treadle machine like I have. That's what I've been using for, has it been like 10 years or something now? I love my treadle machine. I actually bought it brand new because they do actually make brand new treadle machines. You don't have to get old ones, so they're beautiful. They don't have zigzag stitches and all that. I love my treadle machine. It doesn't matter if there's a power outage or not. It doesn't matter if we have enough solar power or not. I don't need it because it's run by the power of my legs. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, is learn how to do things by hand like the way things used to be done, so that you don't have to depend on electricity from any source, be it from a generator or a solar power or the public power. Because that's going to be the cheapest, best way to get started, is just learn how to do some of this stuff. Washing clothes by hand too. There's another thing. I have a nice off-grid laundry setup. I'll put a picture of it here. I'll link to the most recent video I did a few years ago when our washing machine finally died and we had to get a new one. And it took us 6 weeks to get it in. And so I was having to use our off-grid setup. Thankfully, I had it. But anyway, I'll link to that video in the description box down below, along with many other videos. Okay, so because just understand, I'll be linking to videos on how to get started in preparedness, all the many different ways and things that you can use to cook with when the power goes out. I mean, even just having a barbecuer. A lot of people already have a barbecuer. You can do a lot of cooking and baking on a barbecuer. And if you can't afford that and you don't have one, there are even cheaper ways. A little one, just single burner, can be like $30, and you can have that if you need to cook or heat anything. And just make sure you understand anything propane, you got to make sure that you have proper ventilation. This is why right behind me, well, here's my dehydrators, okay? And right there, and that you'll see on the other side of that is where my sliding glass door is. The reason I set that up right there is so if I ever need to fall back on this camp stove / oven, because let's say it's the middle of summer, I don't have a fire going in the wood stove, it's too hot to get a fire going, I can use this propane camp oven / stove if I need to. But I have it set up right next to our sliding glass door so I can open that up and get plenty of ventilation. So that's important. But with that said, there's so much you can get for cheap. When I made that post, a lot of people, took it as it was intended, but there's always going to be that one or two persons that take it wrong and think you're telling them you need to run out and buy a wood stove. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is do what you can to get yourself in a better situation. Even if it's like we did several years ago, we were out garage selling, we saw a camp stove that was in perfectly good running condition, even though it was ugly. $1 is all it cost us. And every time we would see boxes of candles, because you'd be amazed at how many people will buy a whole bunch of candles. A lot of them are fancy candles, and then they just buy them as decor, and then they never burn them, and then they turn around and put them in a garage sale. I've got boxes and boxes of candles. We buy those because they'll sell them for $1, $2 for a big old box of votives, tea lights, and then big pillar candles. I have all kinds around here that I can fall back on. And so even if we run out of clean heat for our oil lanterns, I have candles. And then I have LED lights of all different kinds. In fact, right behind me here, these don't put out a ton of light, but they make a great night light. I have these little LED candles I use mostly for decor, but when the power's out, this is something I would put in like one of these in, like I keep one in the bedroom, maybe one of these in the bathroom, or something similar to it, like these little LED votives here. I love these things. And these make great night lights, or several of these can light up a room. And the funny thing about these is it costs me less to buy 24 of these than it would for me to buy 24 wax votives. So even if I never replace the batteries in these, oh, and the life of them is going to last longer than a single votive. And so even if I run all those down, instead of replacing the battery, I'd be cheaper just to buy another whole pack of those. And they'd last me longer than the same amount of votive candles that would have cost me more in the first place. So I do use these quite a bit. And so for those who are looking for something that maybe you don't want an open flame for many different reasons and you want to be a little safer, you can get these for pretty cheap. If I can find the link, if it's still available to these particular ones, I will link to them down below. Understand my purpose here is to help people, to encourage people, to inspire people, and to get them in a place that help them to see things from a more realistic standpoint. I don't like to use a bunch of scare tactics about the whole grid's gonna go down any second. Because of terrorist attacks or because of HARP or because of whatever other thing that people want to throw out there to scare you with. And while those kind of scare tactics may work for some people, people need real life situations. They need something that's more common sense. Just like many years ago, people just lived this way. They had candles, they had food storage, they had these things, and it was just a way of life because they grew gardens, they had farms. They learned how to put things up while it was coming in so it would get them through the winter. It was just a way of life. It wasn't called preparedness. It was just living. Just like having a little can of savings, of money that they had set aside for emergencies. It's never too late to get back to the old way of doing things and realize that it was just plain common sense. Anybody can afford to do something, no matter what your income is. And I've had several people share their testimonies, and these are all people who got themselves in a better position on very limited money. They were either on a fixed income, or they were on a fixed income and taking care of an elderly parent, or they were a single parent taking care of kids, and some of them taking care of their own kids and an elderly parent, and they were just scraping by. But they did what they could to make it work out for them. And I really recommend you go watch those videos. There's 2 different ones I'll be putting in the description box that have to do with that, where people are sharing their own stories. Just like us starting out, we didn't have a lot of money. Yet little by little, we put things up. We found better ways to do things so we could be prepared in the events of power outages or storms that prevent the trucks from coming into the stores to restock the grocery stores, but we had food on hand for just such occasions, because those things are real life events that happen all the time or happen frequently enough that we're smart enough to know to be ready for them. So that post that I made, by the way, what I was referencing is that I am often surprised at, even in our area where power outages are an incredibly common occurrence. When I first moved here, most people were just ready for such things. They knew better because they were born and raised here. Now people that are born and raised here have become so spoiled that yes, they can afford to go get a wood stove or a generator or some LED lights or candles. They can afford it. These are the people I'm talking about. But instead of doing that, they would rather spend their money on frivolous things that it's just gone, the money's just gone like that. Whether it be fancy vacations or some whatever. They put their money into things that really don't matter rather than taking those same funds and putting them into the things that would get them in a better position. So people who are taking that say, well, some people can't afford to do that. I understand. People cannot afford to run out and buy a wood stove. But everyone can afford to do something to put themselves in a better place. You have to start somewhere. And you don't want to be that poor mom complaining on Facebook, which was what kind of got me to say what I said on there, about how her poor little 11-year-old daughter is going to go crazy. When's the power going to come back on? Well, what she was complaining about is She didn't have her video games and her whatever it was that needed power to keep her entertained. It wasn't about just staying warm. It wasn't about being able to, eat. It was about the entertainment value. They wanted their entertainment. And they didn't have any way to run their TVs and their modems for their internet, because internet was still available. We didn't have a problem because we could still run our modem. But if you don't have power to run your modem, you don't have internet. I mean, so these are the complaints I see from people. And it's like, well, if you can afford all of this stuff, the video games, the whatevers, the daily coffee stand coffees, you can afford to even get a small generator. You can afford to get yourself some LED candles. I think I paid $15 for a pack of 24 of these. You can afford to go to a garage sale and spend a couple dollars on a box full of candles, or $1 or $2 for a used camp stove. Because this is the thing that bothers me, is if you make a post like that, well, I sure hope you're doing things to help other people. How do you know I don't? And why make that assumption? Because you took the post the wrong way. But I will say that, yes, we are here for people and we do help people. But mostly what we do to help people is we help them understand the importance of getting themselves in a better position. And sometimes those little things we do to help, like, when middle of summer and the power's out and the neighbor's worried about her milk that she just bought going sour, we'll bring it over here. We'll put it in our fridge for you until the power comes back on. Simple things like that. And the great thing about that is that it makes people kind of rethink their situation, like, oh, that would really be nice to have something, because it's a lot cheaper, by the way, to get yourself a small generator than it is to set up with solar power. And because that was one of our first investments, was a small, quiet generator. And we fall back on that in the middle of winter when the power goes out. Do want to make sure that our freezers the food stays frozen. So we do fall back on that generator. We've had it for probably about 15 years and I love it. It's quiet. It doesn't make a lot of noise. Like some people's generators are loud and obnoxious. Anyway, something like that to have for an emergency is much cheaper, much more cost effective than getting into solar power. Now, wood stoves, if you can afford one, and if you live in a place where you can have one, they're a great investment. And the reason they're such a great investment is that they can do more than just heat the house. You can cook on them. You can heat water on them so that you can use that water to wash dishes or even bathe with. You can dry your laundry with it. You can dehydrate foods with it. You can do so much with a wood stove, which is why it's something that a lot of people will get if they're able, because it's definitely worth the investment for something like that. And we use ours all about 9 months out of the year. And it gets used for all of those things. The laundry gets hung in front of the wood stove, cook on it, make our coffee on it, make our tea on it, all that. So that's why I like to show that. So if people can afford or want to at least start saving money to get one, and it's an option for them, then yes. But there are so many other ways to go about it that don't have to cost that kind of money and don't even have to wait as long to get it. But there's a lot you can do. You just have to make the decision to do it. It doesn't matter how small your space is, how little money you have. If it's just you, or if it's you and your kids or whatever, there's different things that you can do to at least make things easier on yourself in the event of power outages or the stores not being stocked with the groceries that you normally would buy. There's a lot you can do. I even have a video on food storage for small spaces. Just some creative ways to kind of rethink your space and make it work where you can at least store a little more food than what you have now. Okay, so please just understand what my intentions are. I'm not ever trying to make anyone feel bad for not having what we have that took us a lot of hard work and effort and time to get to. But if you're wanting to be in a better position, all I want to do is encourage people and help show them different ways to go about getting yourself in a better position, because I would love to see everybody be better prepared. The more people that are prepared, the less strain that puts on everyone else. We should never look at, well, somebody will be there for me. How do you know that? How do you know that? Maybe there will be somebody that will take you in so you can stay warm and be fed and whatever. But to assume there's always going to be someone there to do that for you and not taking any steps whatsoever to try to better your own situation, I mean, that's quite a bit to ask, because other people who are doing these same things, they had to work hard to get where they're at, and they weren't necessarily blessed with a huge income to do that. They had to scrimp and save and work for it. So if you're one of those that got angry at that post, understand that we all should be taking some kind of responsibility for our own lives. And I am here to try to help you understand how to go about doing that and to encourage you in that, not to beat you over the head with it or make you feel bad because you can't afford right now to run out and get a generator, solar power, and or a wood stove. Never would I do that. And anybody who's followed me long enough would know me better than that. Know that that's not the kind of person I am. And that I also don't like using scare tactics, because that just turns people off. They'll just call you crazy. Real life is what matters. Showing people. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please, if you have any testimonies you'd like to share, please put them down below. We need to, those real life stories mean so much. And it doesn't matter if you've got solar power and a big fancy this, that, and the other thing, or you just got a little single burner stove and that's all you have. Share that, because everyone needs to see that we all have to start somewhere. And every tiny little step is something, and something is better than nothing. That is for darn sure. Just like me being so grateful to have that one oil lamp. I was so happy and grateful for that single oil lamp. So anyway, I'm going to close this video out. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.